The pollution situation in Chinese cities is very severe. Much as the Chinese government has put sustainable development in the forefront of its 5-year plans, it's just not keeping up with the pace of growth and all of the manufacturing that's going on. Unfortunately, the Chinese decided to get the bicycles off the road along with the ox carts. So now it's really dangerous to ride your bicycle and everybody wants a car. The Chinese government is really afraid of social unrest. And in effect, if the Chinese people understood how bad it really is, then the Chinese government would really have some problems on its hands. I mean, it's already starting. The number of so-called environmental mass incidents throughout the country is huge. These people who finally have their car and they have a nice apartment and their kids are maybe going to good schools, they're asking themselves, why do I have lung cancer? Why can't I trust the water that I'm drinking? I'm not willing to put up with this. And so the question starts to become development for what? You know, what is a good development model? What we've seen recently is really quite fascinating. The US Embassy has air pollution monitors on its roof that measure smaller particles. And so on a day that the US Embassy would say this is very hazardous, the Chinese government would say this is a good day. And so finally the Chinese people, thanks to the internet and all kinds of ways of demanding greater transparency of information, the middle class has said, no, you know, we want this data released, and putting so much pressure on the government that finally the Chinese government, just in the last little bit of time, has agreed that they would monitor these much smaller particulates, which are much more dangerous because they lodge in your lungs. Frankly, the Chinese government's legitimacy is fragile now, and it's resting on providing increases in living standards for the whole country. But ironically, as they increase these living standards, the manufacturing activities are creating more and more pollution, which the rising middle classes are not willing to put up with. So it's a difficult game that the Chinese government is playing right now. What we really need is to marshal the Chinese people's creativity, all of their scientific know-how and inventiveness and their ability to create leapfrogging technologies and come up with a brand new model of sustainable development that doesn't try to follow the same model that the West followed. Because frankly, the planet cannot survive if the Chinese people, you know, so many people in the world, follow that same model. We'll simply collapse as a planet.